From ruining the wrong car to starting whole wars, here are some more tales of revenge that went horribly wrong, with each one even wilder than the last. Mitsuri had a company that rented space in a hangar alongside a few other businesses, but every day he'd find someone had munched on his sandwiches, and they'd never even finish them either. Just take a few bites and put them back. Whoever was doing it, they were definitely taunting him. Enraged, our fella opted to make his next sandwich using mega spicy Carolina Reaper sauce. Whoever this Sammy Snatcher was, they were about to suffer. And just so he could be 100% sure that the criminal would know why, he even left a note. The next day, he threw the lunch bomb in the fridge, and when the time came for his break, left the office. When he made his return, however, things weren't quite as he'd hoped. People all around were panicking, a woman was full-on screaming, and a little kid was bawling his eyes out. Uh-oh. It didn't take long for Mitsuri to realize the guilty party was the cleaner's 9-year-old son. Aghast, he quickly confessed that the food was his and he'd spiked it intentionally. Everybody went ballistic. The landlord asked his company to move out, his friends and co-workers turned against him, and most people accused him of intentionally endangering a child. Jeez. I'll be honest, I don't think our guy did anything wrong at all. It's not his fault somebody didn't raise their kid correctly, and the kid turned out fine. Mitsuri's biggest mistake was admitting to it, though I suppose leaving the note was the real nail in the coffin. It seems like it's all too common for workplaces to be infested with scumbags. Reddit user Nestor Prime worked in a company that offered performance-based bonuses, and when his work was acknowledged, he was thrilled to snag an extra chunk of change. But someone wasn't happy about it. A particularly insufferable coworker we'll call Denise. Not only would Denise rock up late most days, she spent most of the time scrolling through her phone. Well, after Nestor got his bonus, she approached him and guess what? Demanded he share it with her. According to her, considering, and I quote, they all work hard, and that Denise had extra expenses, she deserved Nestor's money. What? Naturally, he told her where to stick it, but she wasn't happy and spent the next few days getting her revenge. She started talking smack about our man behind his back, going around the office and telling everyone how selfish and greedy he was for not giving his bonus away. Ultimately, Nestor opted to escalate things to HR and was told in no uncertain terms that Denise had a history of this sort of behavior and had been warned against such misconduct. Seems she hadn't listened. Well, this bout of crappy behavior was the last straw, and Denise was fired. Gonzo. Maybe if she spent a little more time working and a little less time being a massive, she'd still have a job, huh? But as annoying as Denise was, buckle up for this absolutely insane tale from a now deleted Reddit user we'll call Jimmy. Now, Jimmy had been at his company for 3 years, and a snooty woman we'll call Sally had been there for 12. She was next in line for a very high-up position just below the CEO, so she had a very high opinion of herself. Well, one day Jimmy was in a rush to drop something off to his boss and accidentally brushed past her in the hallway, and she lost her damn mind. Seriously, didn't he know who she was? So she decided to take revenge and reported Jimmy for harassment, claiming he grabbed her butt in the hall. I'm not joking. She made an allegation that could potentially ruin somebody's life over a hallway bump. The incredible claim stunned Jimmy. He knew if he didn't find a way to defuse this, he'd lose everything. So Jimmy had a word with a guy in the office that Sally spoke to all the time. Turns out he couldn't stand her either and agreed to record his conversations with her to try and clear Jimmy's name. Well, not only did she almost immediately admit to lying about Jimmy, but she also happily revealed she got 3 other guys fired with false harassment claims too. What a piece of work. But now, with her confessions on tape, Jimmy had his evidence. And when he took it to the top, a series of dominoes fell that nobody could have predicted. Why? It turned out Sally was also embezzling money and had a whole load of people around her who were complicit. Not only did she, alongside the people in her orbit, lose their jobs, but Sally's marriage collapsed under the strain and she found herself potentially looking at jail time. Looks like revenge just isn't for you, Sally. I'd say don't quit your day job, but you know. Back in 2017, Redditor Shadow666 moved into an apartment with 3 of her best friends, some guys she'd met in college. The group had a communal jar they all topped up to be used for grocery shopping and the like. Remember that. Okay, so one of the guys, Jay, started dating a girl called Karen. When the aptly named love interest discovered that Shadow lived with the guys, she instantly took a dislike to her. Clearly jealous and insecure, it didn't take long for her to blow up. She accused Jay of cheating, Shadow of sleeping with all 3 guys, and after Jay made them breakfast, demanded that Shadow pay him back for all the food he was wasting on her. Wow. One thing was clear, she wanted Jay to cut ties with Shadow, but he refused. Needless to say, she was more than a little angry. From that point on, cash for the communal grocery jar started going missing. Then, small things from the common room vanished too and began appearing in Shadow's room. It was obvious what was happening. Karen was trying to frame Shadow. Hell, she even reported her to the landlord, claiming she was trashing the place. Well, Shadow and fellow housemate Cam weren't gonna take it lying down and came up with a sneaky plan. They waited for a night that Jay was out and Karen was loitering around the apartment, then hid in Cam's room together. Then they made a big show of pretending to canoodle and loudly spoke about how Jay couldn't find out, all with the door to the room open just enough for Karen to peep through and see, which she did. But why? What would that achieve? Well, Karen, as expected, used it as more ammunition. She claimed that the fact the apparent relationship was being kept from Jay showed that his friends were untrustworthy, prompting Jay to confront Shadow and Cam. The pair claimed that nothing was happening, conveniently leaving out the fact they tricked Karen into thinking otherwise and their other housemate backed them. What's more, they told Jay they suspected Karen of being behind the grocery jar thefts and other strange goings-on around the place. With that, it was now painfully obvious to Jay that his girlfriend was trying to turn him against his friends. And the next day, he dumped her ass. Nice try, Karen, but bros before. Sometimes people just get an unhealthy obsession with others, hating on them for no real reason. Enter KSI, YouTuber, boxer, rapper, jack of all trades and master of literally none. Anyway, KSI is one of the masterminds behind Lunchables. Lunchly, a lunch hit for kids. Only in September 2024, another YouTuber, Dan TDM, made a tweet pointing out how lame the concept was and that KSI and friends just seem to be taking money from impressionable children. He spit facts, but KSI wasn't happy. Clearly upset by Dan's comments, he publicly called out the YouTuber, pointing out his previous merch drops and endorsements. That'd be one thing, a snide comeback calling out what he perceived as hypocrisy, fine. But this is KSI we're talking about. He's overly sensitive and a little dim. He just couldn't let Dan's pretty tame comment go and made multiple social media posts and even an entire YouTube video whining about it.
Everyone on the Reddit, when JJ decides to delete his credibility by picking a fight with an OG YouTuber over a lunchbox. He started it! I just released the product! This mother came at me! Am I not allowed to respond? Oh, you...
Yeah, this embarrassing display of fragile ego goes on for 20 minutes. But audience opinion definitely wasn't on KSI's side. Not that KSI became self-aware or anything. Nope, he doubled down, challenging Dan to come on his podcast to, I quote, talk it out like men.
Oh, wait, you serious? Let me laugh even harder.
That's just pathetic, and everybody agreed. KSI wanted to intimidate Dan to look tough to be an alpha male. Instead, he looked like an insecure shrimp, and this went on for months. Good lord, look at this, it's a massacre. Has anybody ever looked this cringe to so many people?
Stop! He's already dead.
The best part, Dan never even responded to KSI's whining. He was busy spending time with his family, while KSI was busy embarrassing himself. Know when to let things go, everybody.
I sleep in a racing car. Do you?
I sleep in a big bed with my wife.
But it's not just cringy YouTubers that take revenge too far. Would you believe that war almost broke out once over a pig? I'm serious. Back in 1846, the Oregon Treaty was signed by the US and Britain. This was back when Britain still had some North American colonies, and it was designed to end a border dispute between the two nations, clearly defining where US territory ended and British began. Oh, well and good, right? Wrong. See, the line got murky with some islands off the coast of Vancouver, most notably San Juan Island. Because of its awkward positioning, the territorial line went right through it, and due to its strategic placement, both countries wanted it as their own. Despite this, both sides continued to live and work on San Juan, attempting to share it harmoniously.
Like that's ever gonna happen.
Though the islanders got on pretty well, considering the awkward circumstances, it was obvious that something would eventually happen to mess things up. And yes, that something was a pig. In 1859, a hog belonging to a British farmer wandered onto the land of Lyman Cutler, an American one. He was enraged to see the swine eating his potatoes and promptly shot it. Shortly afterwards, the pig's owner, Charles Griffin, came knocking, equally enraged. His pig was dead. Hungry for vengeance, Griffin reported Cutler to the local British authorities, but this only stoked the fire, angering the Americans on the island. In turn, they drew up a petition requesting protection from the U.S. military. 66 U.S. infantry members were dispatched to San Juan, and the British responded by sending 3 warships as a show of force. This standoff lasted a month, with both sides gradually increasing their military presence on the island. Eventually, this weird pig disagreement had escalated all the way to the brink of war, with 3 warships, 84 guns, and over 2,600 men ready to fight. When word finally reached Washington and London about the situation, they both replied with a succinct, "What the hell are you guys doing?" A formal agreement was drawn up limiting the presence of the US and the British, and in 1872 it was decided that the island should solely belong to America. Just think, one hog almost caused war between 2 of the biggest powers on the planet. Must have been one heck of a popular pig. History is full of revenge that didn't go exactly as planned, but this next tale is so unbelievably brutal it puts Game of Thrones to shame. In 945 CE, Prince Igor of Kiev ruled over an area that is now Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus with his wife Olga. His empire of Kievan Rus was expanded, and neighboring nations were forced to pay tribute. Essentially, extorted for protection money, where protection meant we won't attack you.
Where's the money? When are you going to get the money? Why aren't you getting the money now?
Now, the neighboring Drevlian tribe had stopped paying tribute to Kievan Rus back in 912. Igor wanted to change that, so he set out for the Drevlian capital, Iskorosten. He rocked up, demanded payment, and refused to leave until he got it. Well, as revenge for his entitlement, the Drevlians tied his 2 legs to bent down birch trees and let the trees straighten. Put it this way, he didn't survive. Then they sent word to Olga demanding she marry their Prince Mal to cement their power. You know, given that she was newly single and all. Olga was mad, real mad. But she pretended to play nice with the kingdom that had just offed her hubby. She graciously welcomed the 20 Drevlian ambassadors who arrived to negotiate her next marriage before swiftly having them thrown into a trench and buried alive. Next, she contacted the blissfully unaware Mal and agreed to marry him on the condition that he send some of his most important, invaluable people to escort her to him. Mal obliged and sent some of his very best chieftains. Olga promptly locked them in a bathhouse and set it on fire. She then contacted Mal again, asking to visit Iskorosten to hold a funeral feast for her late husband before her new marriage. Mal, who still had no idea what had happened to all his men, accepted. Olga and her soldiers arrived, attended the funeral feast, and waited for the Drevlians to get drunk, all while being very careful about their own drinking. Then, when they were sufficiently wasted, she ordered her men to slaughter them. Taken by surprise and completely sloshed, thousands were wiped out. Following this, Olga waged war on the tribe, and it was successful, aside from one city that refused to fall even a year later, Korosten. With her army besieging the city, she informed them that she had had her fill of revenge should they fulfill one request. Every Drevlian house hand over 3 pigeons and 3 sparrows. What the heck was she thinking? Well, the Drevlians agreed and sent the birds, and that was a big mistake. Olga had her soldiers tie strings to the birds' feet with cloth-bound sulfur attached to the end, then set it alight. When the birds returned to their nest in Drevlian homes, haystacks, and coops, the entire city was set ablaze. Any Drevlian survivors were rounded up and either off, made slaves, or spared, but only so they could pay tribute to her. Man, she outrevenged them so hard. But not everybody can so expertly burn their enemies to the ground. Back in 2018, a New Zealand man named Michael McFadden got dumped. Now, Michael was very sad, so he dreamt up a genius revenge plot. His big plan, his ultimate gambit, was going to set his ex's car on fire.
But why? Why would you do that? Why would you do any of that?
That's some real beta energy, bruh. Were your fifis hurt, Michael? He and his loser friend traveled to his ex's house, filled an ice cream truck with petrol, and got into possession. Then, they ignited the petrol with a rag and watched the truck burn. The kicker? It wasn't his ex's. It actually belonged to her mom. Man, this soggy slice of bread couldn't even act out his embarrassing revenge plot without screwing it up. After the fire was put out, Michael and his bud were charged and sentenced. His friend got a year in jail while the main man got 7 months home detention. What a pathetic little worm. Now, if I had a nickel for every car-themed story in this video, I'd have 2 nickels. This time it's a girl who got dumped. In Florida in 2025, deputies responded to a vandalism call, arriving on scene to find an 18-year-old girl, the one who'd just been dumped, and her 16-year-old friend. The less-than-dynamic duo had spray-painted her ex's car in an effort to get back at him. At least that was the plan.
You really need to try harder to try to be sneaky because you are god-awful. You guys spray-painted the wrong damn car.
Oops, wrong car, kiddo. Just look at this thing. They totally ruined it. Both girls had the book thrown at them. The 18-year-old got charged with criminal mischief, contributing to the delinquency of a minor, possession of alcohol under 21, and driving under the influence. The 16-year-old was charged with marijuana possession. I'm glad they got their comeuppance, but I feel so bad for the guy whose car got vandalized. Personally, I think the girl should have been made to do the cleanup, too. Back around 2003, a now deleted Redditor we'll call Ted experienced his own hilarious story of revenge that went wrong. See, Ted had a coworker who was incredibly annoying. He'd pick stuff out of his own hair like a champ and rub it on the carpet. That's the kind of guy we're talking about. Ugh. Arrogant, miserly, and a bit dim, Brad was the most unpopular guy in the office. Now, one day, Ted asked after Brad and was told that he'd gone off to the restroom. Seeing a golden opportunity to take out his frustrations, Ted ran off down the hall. One cubicle stall was shut, and he knew it must be Brad inside, so he grabbed a handful of paper towels, soaked them in water, and scrunched them into a sticky ball. With a mighty heave, he threw the towel bomb into the cubicle and ran. Brad screeched and raged. Ted laughed his ass off as he sat back down at his desk. Brad came running over, his shirt and hair soaked and covered in sticky bits of paper. He asked why Ted did it, but our guy feigned ignorance, claiming he had no idea what he was talking about and had been sat at his desk working hard the whole time. But Brad knew. Flash forwards a week, Brad was asking after Ted this time, and when he was told that he was in the restroom, he saw his chance for revenge. With a smirk on his face, Big Bradder shot down the hall and entered the room. In front of him was a single closed stall. In a vengeance-fueled frenzy, Brad crafted his own soggy paper ball and launched it into the cubicle. Only it wasn't Ted in there at all. Heck, he wasn't even in the building at the time. Brad had gotten bad information. So who did he actually splat? The managing director of an Asian car company affiliate who shared the floor. Uh-oh. That managing director pushed with Brad's boss for a punishment of some kind, and the boss obliged. Brad was fired, and I bet the office became a much better place to work. It's never easy having difficult coworkers. Trust me, I can't take Buzzkill Man's crap anymore. Redditor Sasha29 had one such coworker too. See, Sasha has a physical disability that causes her to need a cane or braces on occasion. She worked in a preschool, and most of her colleagues were very understanding of her condition. One that we'll call Betty, however, continually made insulting comments like, "I've never worked with an injured person before." On top of this, she'd forget about the limitations Sasha had, constantly asking her to do things she was incapable of. Sasha wanted payback. So each classroom at the school had sets of wooden blocks with labeled shelves to let kids know where to store them. The only exception to this was Betty's room. For whatever reason, Betty instead opted to just moan at the kids for not knowing where the blocks went. So enter Sasha's evil scheme. She snuck into the room on Friday just before leaving for the weekend and labeled her shelves. Now I know what you're thinking. That's terrible. One of the most pathetic revenge attempts imaginable. There's no way it worked out, right? And yeah, you'd be totally right. Betty loved the kind gesture and even got Sasha a thank you gift. Look, I think two things are clear here. One, Sasha is completely incapable of getting revenge on anybody, and two, she was exaggerating about how bad her coworker was. Unless that thank you gift was a bag of dog do, I think Betty's probably alright after all. So when I read this story from Reddit user OKCombination475, I was incredibly invested. You see, Combination got cheated on by his girlfriend of 11 years. Man, talk about a gut punch. Incredibly, even after betraying her partner in one of the worst ways possible, his ex, who we'll call Scumbag, expected Combo to give her money. See, her new man was unemployed and cashless, while Combo had enough to regularly treat Scumbag while they were dating. Firstly, she demanded that our guy move out of his house so that Scumbag and Brokey could live there. Oh, and they'd keep Combo's dogs too. Combo would still need to pay for their vet bills and upkeep, but he just wasn't allowed to own them anymore. Naturally, our hero told her where to stick it and kicked them both out of his house. Quite right, too. But Scumbag wasn't done. She was enraged and desperate for revenge. As far as she was concerned, she deserved Combo's money. First, she claimed that because Combo had kicked her out, she'd been forced to quit her job and relocate. So she tried to sue our man for lost wages. This, of course, didn't work. Next, she tried to threaten his workplace with legal action, claiming that as Combo was employed by them, they were somehow responsible for her finances. Haha, okay. She demanded that they settle out of court for $100,000. Instead, they filed harassment charges against her. Any sane person would give up at this point. It clearly wasn't working out, but not Scumbag. She was determined to win. Her next port of call was to contact any of Combo's family members she could find and ask them for money. She told them he was jealous that she'd moved on with somebody else and that he'd cost her everything out of spite. Given how badly she'd been treated, the least they could do was send her money. Would you believe that this didn't work either? The absolute audacity of this woman. Long story short, Scumbag wound up poor as dirt with nothing but some harassment charges to her name. Combo got a restraining order and all was right with the world. Hope she was happy with Brokey in the end. If there's one thing I hate more than cheaters, it's spiders. A now deleted Redditor who we'll call Sam was driving home one morning when she noticed a big scary one crawling around her dashboard. Not wanting to panic and crash, she pulled over. This spider had destroyed the sanctity of her car and had to pay. Sam reached for her trusty pepper spray and opened fire on the arachnid intruder. But it didn't die. Oh no, it kept crawling. In fact, it only got more and more frantic, and Sam became just as frantic as she watched it. In a frenzy, she sprayed the obnoxious concoction all over her car, yet the spider managed to run away and hide under a seat. Meanwhile, Sam had to sit in the mess she'd made. Her car was a war zone, she could barely breathe, and her eyes burned intensely as she struggled to drive herself home. But the disaster didn't end there. The next day, her mom took the car to go get gas. While out, she needed to blow her nose and grabbed a tissue from the seat, unaware that everything was contaminated. Yep, her mom also found herself with a burning face. And the spider? It seems he got away. Who said revenge only went wrong when it was against humans? Over in the UK in 2019, two dribbling morons failed a revenge plot so spectacularly that it should be studied. See, a year prior in 2018, Mohammed Aslam and his son Mohammed Nazir had an altercation with the owner of a Birmingham clothes store named Mahmoud Aslat. Details are sparse, but it seems the two families had a very bad falling out, ending with the father-son Mohammed duo getting badly beaten. Was it an attempted theft? A personal gripe? Who knows, but the pair wanted revenge. Extreme revenge. So they managed to get in contact with a US-based hitwoman named Amy Betro and flew her out to the UK. The devilish duo gave her a firearm and instructions to gun down either Ocelot or a member of his family in cold blood. Betro agreed and drove over to Ocelot's home, with the Mohammeds following in a separate car to observe. They waited and waited, then finally someone showed up. It was Sikander Ali, Ocelot's innocent son. Betro jumped at the chance and advanced on Ali, pointing the weapon at him and firing it at almost point-blank range. It should have been a slam dunk, but nothing happened. The gun had jammed. The confusion gave Ali the chance to hop in his car and escape the scene unharmed. The two Mohammeds weren't so lucky and were arrested shortly after the attempted slaying, with the UK government working to extradite Betro. The two were charged with conspiracy to murder, while Daddy also got slapped with importing and possessing a firearm as well as perverting the course of justice. Combined, they were sentenced to 40 years in prison. Just think how bad things could have been if that gun didn't jam. Yikes. Well, it did. A hilariously pathetic end to some hilariously pathetic people. The only thing that could have made it more delicious is if the gun fell apart instead of jamming, preferably with a goofy sound effect. The Wild West was full of tales of revenge and bloodshed, but few were as infamous and incredible as the Earp Vendetta Ride. Our story begins in the small town of Tombstone in 1881, where the Earp brothers Wyatt, Morgan, and Virgil served as lawmen. Virgil was the marshal of the town, and both his brothers were deputies. Only the area was frequently ravaged by a gang of vicious outlaws known as the Cowboys. They'd rob stagecoaches, steal cattle, and regularly off people they didn't care for. Before Virgil and co. arrived on the scene, they'd gone basically unchallenged, causing as much mayhem as they wanted. But when the new marshal was elected, he wasn't going to stand for it anymore and declared war on them all. Over the following months, both groups battled it out, vying for control of the town. As tensions between them rose, it was inevitable that the feud would end the only way it could back in the West, with a good old-fashioned shootout. The day came on October 26, 1881, when the Earps, alongside their friend Doc Holliday, confronted 5 cowboys in a vacant lot. Virgil wanted to enforce a new law prohibiting carrying weapons in town. The cowboys, of course, weren't too happy about this and refused to comply. The ensuing gunfight went down in history, with firearms exploding all over the place. One of the high-ranking cowboys, Ike Clanton, fled the scene. Not that it lasted much longer. After just 30 seconds, the shooting was over and 3 of the cowboys lay motionless on the ground. It became known as the gunfight at the OK Corral, a livery in Tombstone that, confusingly, was not where the shootout actually took place. Regardless, after fleeing the scene, Clanton wanted revenge. First, he accused the Earps and Holliday of attacking unprovoked, but this didn't stick. Not that Clanton was discouraged. If he couldn't get his vengeance through the law, he'd just get it outside of the law. One night in December 1881, 2 months after the shootout, Virgil Earp was passing through 5th Street in Tombstone when 3 armed assassins jumped out and shot him. Despite being hit by some 19 shots, the marshal miraculously survived, but was badly wounded. Then, early the following year, Morgan was playing pool in a saloon when he was tragically gunned down by more assassins. Clearly, Ike Clanton and the Cowboys were behind the attacks, and after the carnage they caused, they probably thought they'd gotten away with it. But there was something old Ike wasn't aware of. Morgan's dying wish was for Wyatt to avenge him. And so, with a burning desire for vengeance of his own, Wyatt started organizing what would become known as the Earp Vendetta Ride. He gathered a band of his most loyal friends, abandoned the law and his position as deputy, and left Tombstone in a bid to take matters into his own hands. And oh boy, he did. Over the next few weeks, Wyatt and his posse rode the west from Arizona to Albuquerque, blasting any members of the Cowboys they could find without mercy. Those few that escaped fled, terrified of Wyatt, and all because they dared to seek revenge for that fateful shootout. Indeed, the hunt only ended when warrants for the arrests of Wyatt and co. were put forward, causing them to finally withdraw. The group never managed to find Ike Clanton, but he was ultimately taken care of by a lawman in 1887 after returning to Tombstone. Well, this is definitely one revenge attempt that was better off avoided. And on that action-packed note, I've had my fill of failed revenge plots for one day. Which of these stories did you like the best? Let me know down in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.